I lived a double life for 2 years, and nobody, absolutely nobody, had the slightest idea. It all started as a game that quickly got out of control. At first, it was just excitement, the adrenaline rush of feeling like I could do whatever I wanted without anyone knowing. But over time, it became a routine I couldn't break. In the mornings, I'd wake up, make breakfast for my husband, make sure everything was perfect, and while he was at work, I'd plan who I was going to meet next. Every meeting had an excuse. Every message I sent had to disappear before anyone could suspect anything. It was an impossible balance, but somehow it worked. I remember the first mistake I made. It was with someone who seemed harmless, a coworker who always showed interest, but I never thought it would actually affect me. The first time we met outside of work, I felt a thrill. My heart raced. But the strangest part was the feeling that no one could ever know. From that moment, everything became a game of hide and seek. Every smile, every deleted message, every dropped call was part of the routine. I became an expert at erasing traces, at staying on the edge of being caught, and that gave me a strange kind of power I couldn't deny. During those 2 years, I made rules for myself. Never at home, never leaving physical evidence, and never mixing lives. I had to be perfect, at least on the surface. So while my husband trusted me completely, I lived in two completely separate worlds. Some weekends, I'd disappear with excuses about work or meetings that never existed. And in those moments, the other world came alive. It's hard to describe without sounding like a novel, but every time I stepped into that secret life, I felt like I was truly breathing, like I was a version of myself no one else knew. The most dangerous part was the routine. At first, every meeting was carefully planned, every message sent at just the right moment. But after a few months, I started to relax, thinking I could handle it all. That was a mistake, because when you think you're invincible, you start making small errors that, when added up, could destroy everything. There were a few times my husband almost caught me. Calls at weird hours, a message that popped up on my phone by accident, suspicious looks. Every time I dodged suspicion, I felt a mix of fear and excitement that pushed me to keep going. It was an endless cycle. Fear, passion, guilt, thrill, all tangled together in a whirlwind that completely consumed me. What I missed most from those years wasn't the sex or the intense emotions. It was the sense of control. It was like having two lives, two identities, and being the absolute owner of both. I could be the perfect wife, the woman who cared for the home, smiled, listened, shared, and at the same time, be whoever I wanted outside that bubble. Each lover had their role, personality, rules, and I learned to manage every situation like a chessboard. The adrenaline of not getting caught became addictive, and the more I got involved, the harder it was to stop. There were moments I thought about quitting, ending it all before it blew up, but I always found a reason to keep going. The fear of losing the thrill, the comfort of the secret routine, the feeling of power. It all kept me trapped. Even when I told myself I was playing with fire, every warning went ignored. My life became a maze of secrets. A message sent quickly, a made-up excuse, a lie I had to remember so everything fit. There was no margin for error, yet I felt invincible. In those 2 years, I met people I never would have encountered in my daily life. Some were bold, others shy, some manipulative, others naive. All contributed to that parallel world that consumed me, making me feel alive and dangerous at the same time. I learned names, schedules, routines, preferences, and also learned to hide it all from my husband. Every secret was both a burden and a pleasure. The feeling of being alive, of having something no one else knew, was intoxicating. The irony is that while I was living this double life, my husband trusted me completely. He never suspected a thing. Every smile he gave me, every hug, every gesture of affection made me feel a strange mix of guilt and euphoria. It was like walking a tightrope. One wrong step and everything could collapse. But as long as I held it, the sense of power was indescribable. I learned to read him, anticipate his questions, plan quick and convincing answers. Every interaction was a balancing act, and I was completely trapped in the dynamic I had created. There were moments that bordered on absurd. Family gatherings where I had to interact with people who secretly were part of my other world without knowing it. Dinners where my phone would buzz with messages I had to ignore. Quick encounters in cars or motels that had to be precise and calculated. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could be fatal. I learned to live with constant paranoia of being caught, and at the same time, I savored every moment. The thrill of no one knowing what I was doing became a drug that kept me awake, alert, and in a way, more alive than ever. Over time, the logistics of maintaining two lives started affecting me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I remember one particular day that scared me half to death. I had planned to meet one of my lovers at a cafe while my husband was at work. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, until my phone rang. It was him. My heart stopped. His name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, I felt like everything was collapsing. I had to come up with a quick excuse, something convincing, because ignoring the call or hanging up would have been suspicious. I sat in the cafe with trembling hands, pretending to check something on my phone, unable to stop thinking about how close I had come to being caught. Moments like that started happening more often, and the tension began seeping into my everyday life. One of the hardest things was managing emotions. At first, I didn't feel anything for any of my lovers. It was pure thrill, adrenaline, fun. But over time, the lines started to blur. One of them began to matter more than he should have, and even though I never thought I could get attached in this context, I found myself looking forward to those encounters more than the ones I had with my husband. I don't regret feeling it, but I realized I was playing with fire. Any mistake could destroy not only my marriage, but also the part of me I thought was untouchable. There was a moment when I felt completely trapped. I was organizing a trip with my husband, a long weekend, while at the same time planning a meeting with another man I had known for months. Everything had to line up perfectly. Hotels had to be booked, schedules planned, absences justified. It was exhausting, but at the same time, something kept me hooked. The feeling that I could get away with it, that no one knew what I was really doing. That sensation was addictive. Every encounter, every deleted message, every timely lie gave me a rush I couldn't deny. Curiously, I began noticing patterns in my own behavior. I surprised myself by becoming more cautious, more calculated, more strategic. I learned to anticipate reactions, to read people's emotions so I wouldn't leave loose ends. Each lover had different rules, each a different rhythm, and I had to adapt without anyone noticing. The double life wasn't just about what I did, it was in how I thought, how I breathed, how I interacted with the world. Everything was colored by the secret I carried inside. Sometimes I wondered if this was changing me as a person. There were moments I felt guilty, but I quickly pushed it aside because the thrill was stronger than any remorse. The adrenaline of not being caught, the sense of total control over my secret life made me feel invincible. Even my own reflection started to feel strange. I looked in the mirror and saw someone who had learned to lie naturally, to manage emotions I didn't even know existed, to hide parts of myself that for 2 years no one had ever seen. There came a point when my husband started noticing subtle changes. They weren't obvious, but he is observant. He would ask things like, "Are you tired?" or "Everything okay at work?" And though I responded normally, I felt he could sense something different. Every question spiked my anxiety. I knew that a single mistake could trigger suspicion. Every smile I gave him while planning my next encounter was a reminder of how risky everything I was doing really was. I learned to live with the constant feeling that any moment could be the last before my secret was exposed. During those years, I also learned to manipulate my emotions just to stay sane. There were days I felt exhausted, guilty, trapped, yet I still had to present myself as the perfect wife. Everything had to be in order. The house clean, meals ready, conversations pleasant. And while I faked normalcy, I planned secret meetings, answered self-deleting messages, and prepared for new adventures without anyone noticing. Every step was calculated, every word measured. It was a constant balance between the world everyone knew and the one I secretly lived. One detail no one imagines is how lonely a life like this can feel. Outwardly, everything seemed perfect. A stable marriage, love, routine. Inside, it was chaos. No one could share my secrets. No one could understand the mix of guilt and pleasure I felt. Sometimes I thought about confessing everything, about letting go of the weight I carried, but I always found a reason not to. The fear of losing the thrill, the desire to keep controlling my double life, and the thought that if I were discovered, I could lose everything kept me silent. Unexpected twists were also part of the game. Some lovers disappeared suddenly, others became more insistent, some wanted more than I was willing to give. Every situation tested my ability to keep everything under control. I learned to say no, to create excuses, to disappear without questions. And yet, the adrenaline of knowing that every action could be discovered never faded. Every day was a juggling act of emotions and logistics, and I remained trapped in the routine I had created. And even though there were moments of exhaustion, fear, and guilt, there were also moments of absolute euphoria. Every message deleted in time, every secret meeting that ended without incident, every smile I managed to give while keeping the secret felt like a victory. That feeling kept me hooked, made me go on even when I knew I was playing with fire. My double life had turned me into someone I barely recognized, but at the same time, it gave me a power I couldn't ignore. After almost a year and a half of maintaining my double life, things started getting more complicated than I had ever anticipated. At first, every secret encounter was thrilling, almost liberating. But over time, the excitement began to mix with fear and anxiety. It wasn't just about worrying that my husband might suspect anything anymore. It was about managing expectations, feelings, and jealousy from my lovers. Each person had their own dynamics, and although I thought I had control over everything, reality started proving otherwise. I remember one particularly chaotic weekend. I had plans to meet a lover I had just met, but my husband decided he wanted to spend Saturday at home. My first instinct was to cancel, but the thrill of this lover, the adrenaline of seeing him, was too strong. So I improvised. I lied, invented a last-minute outing, a sudden work commitment, and went with him. Driving to our meeting, I felt the familiar mix of fear and excitement that had kept me hooked throughout my double life. I knew that if my husband had called at that exact moment, everything would have fallen apart. That week made me realize I was playing with fire and could no longer afford mistakes. One day, a message from one of my lovers crossed with another intended for my husband. My heart stopped for a few seconds. I had to quickly invent an explanation that wouldn't raise suspicion. My mind raced at full speed, figuring out how to fix it before anyone noticed something was off. It was in moments like that I realized this wasn't just fun or thrill anymore. My double life had become a complex web that could trap me at any moment. As the months went by, I started noticing changes in myself. There were moments of deep guilt, but I immediately replaced them with the euphoria of secrecy. It was like a drug. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was risking everything, but each time I escaped a close call, the feeling of invulnerability grew. I learned to read everyone around me, anticipate their moves, manipulate situations without them noticing. Every gesture, every glance, every call became a strategic game that kept me alive and alert. There was one situation that almost destroyed everything. One of my lovers started being too demanding, wanting more time than I could give. I tried to set boundaries, keep distance, but he began to pressure me, sending messages at odd hours, trying to coincide with my free days. I started feeling real fear. Fear that my husband would find out, fear that my other secret relationships would get complicated. For days, my life was a mental chaos. I kept thinking about how to manage it, how to maintain balance without anything falling apart. The pressure was reaching a critical point, and I felt like any mistake could trigger disaster. Small incidents also started cropping up, forcing me to constantly improvise. Once a message I had quickly deleted was accidentally seen by a friend who wasn't supposed to see it. I had to invent a convincing lie about a fake job, a meeting that never happened. Another day, an acquaintance started asking too many questions about my whereabouts during a weekend I had devoted to my lovers. Every detail, every move had to be carefully calculated. I was becoming an expert at manipulating how others perceived me, but I also felt the weight of it was too heavy. The scariest part was that, despite all the dangers, I couldn't stop. There was something about the adrenaline, the sense of absolute secret control that kept me hooked. It was an impossible cycle. Thrill, fear, guilt, euphoria, and then starting all over again. Each lover represented a different world, and I had to balance all those worlds while maintaining a perfect facade in front of my husband. 2 years of a double life had taught me to be meticulous, to calculate every move, but it also trapped me in a routine of secrecy and lies that was almost impossible to escape. I started noticing that my own behavior was changing outside of the clandestine relationships. I became more distant, more cautious, sometimes cold, because I could no longer afford to be careless. Even at family gatherings or with friends, I was constantly checking my phone, anticipating messages, remembering excuses, organizing schedules. Every interaction became a calculated act, and though I seemed normal on the outside, inside I was constantly tense. My life was no longer just what everyone saw. It was a labyrinth of secrets consuming every moment of my time and energy. Despite all the risks, there were moments of pure euphoria. Every secret meeting that ended without incident, every none-noticed lie, every message deleted in time felt like a small victory. But I knew it couldn't last forever. The risk of being discovered increased with each passing day, and although the thrill was addicting, the shadow of disaster grew larger. Fear had become part of my daily routine, mixed with adrenaline, making every move a precarious balance. And even though I felt powerful managing it all, one question constantly lingered in my mind. When and how would it all fall apart? I knew eventually there would be a moment when a mistake, a slip, or someone too curious could destroy the illusion I had maintained for 2 years. That mix of power and fear kept me alert, alive, and at the same time completely trapped in the web I had woven myself.
Everything started to unravel in an unexpected way.
During those 2 years of living a double life, I had learned to anticipate everything, calculate every step, keep every meeting and message under control. But there's something no plan can prepare you for: the combination of chance and people who don't act as you expect. It was a random Saturday when it all began to fall apart. I had plans to see one of my lovers, and my husband decided he wanted to spend the day with friends out of town. So far, perfect. But just before leaving, I received a message that sent chills down my spine. One of my lovers said a friend of his had seen something suspicious about me. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but my instincts screamed that something was out of control. I decided to cancel that meeting and focus on covering myself with my husband, but while driving toward my friend's place, my phone rang. It was another lover, asking why I hadn't shown up. In that moment, I felt the pressure of the past months explode in my face. Every lie, every deleted message, every invented excuse was starting to pile up and turn into a real risk. I felt genuine fear, a fear I hadn't experienced in all this time, because for the first time, I realized I could lose everything in an instant. The following days were absolute chaos. Crossed messages, unexpected calls, awkward questions. Each lover was pressing for time and attention, each with expectations I couldn't meet. My husband, unsuspecting, began noticing small changes in my behavior, my scattered attention, hidden anxiety, the need to disappear for hours. I was trapped in a web of my own making, and the harder I tried to keep everything under control, the more it spiraled out of my hands. The breaking point came when one of my lovers decided to show up somewhere I happened to be with my husband. I don't know how he knew or what motivated him, but in seconds I felt my world collapse. My husband looked at me with a mix of surprise and confusion, while I tried to stay calm and act normal. Inside, I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. This was the moment I had feared for months, the possibility of being exposed all at once, with no margin for maneuvering. The most ironic thing was how I reacted. Instead of panicking or trying to invent excuses on the spot, I felt a strange clarity. I knew my secrets couldn't stay hidden forever. Everything I had built carefully over 2 years was about to fall apart, and the thrill that had kept me alive turned into pure fear, mixed with a strange relief. Finally, I didn't have to maintain the double life anymore. When everything came to light, there wasn't the immediate confrontation I had expected. My husband was shocked, yes, but also incredulous, and that incredulity gave me a few minutes to process what I had done. The lovers started sending messages, some angry, some incredulous. The web I had woven over so long unraveled in hours. Everything became real: the faces, the messages, the exposed secrets, the sense that my perfect life had been an illusion that no longer existed. After those moments, I faced reality with brutal honesty. I understood that I had been playing with fire for too long, and that the price of secret excitement was higher than I could have ever imagined. My husband and I talked, though not immediately. There were days of silence, tension, and glances that said everything without words. My lovers disappeared from my life, some forever, others with empty promises. What had been a secret routine of power and thrill became a memory that would haunt me forever. Still, there's something strange about all of this. I don't feel complete regret, because those 2 years taught me things about myself I never would have discovered otherwise. The sense of control, the ability to handle extreme situations, the adrenaline of living an absolute secret, all of it left an indelible mark.
But I also learned that the line between secret pleasure and self-destruction is thinner than anyone imagines. Today, looking back, I see someone who lived in two worlds at once, someone who managed lies with precision, but who ultimately had to face the truth. The double life ended, and though the damage was done, it also gave me clarity. Nothing is eternal, and no lie can last forever. The greatest lesson is that no matter how skilled you are, the truth always finds its way. And here I am, telling this story not to justify myself, not to ask for forgiveness, but because I need someone to hear it as it was, raw, direct, dangerous, and completely real. 2 years of a double life, 2 years of secrets, 2 years living on the edge, learning that even when you think you're in control, life has the most unexpected way of catching you out.